He told me I was nothing without him. 6 months later, he was sitting in my office begging for a job, and he had no idea I was the one interviewing him. Look, I'm not here to tell you some fairy tale about overnight success or instant karma. This is about what happens when someone bets against you and you decide to prove them wrong, not for them, for you. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what happened. And if you've ever been told you're not good enough, not smart enough, or that you'll never make it on your own, this one's for you. So here's how it started. I was married to someone I thought was my partner. Turns out he was more like my manager, and not the good kind. The kind that micromanages everything you do, controls every dollar you spend, and makes you feel like you can't tie your shoes without permission. For 8 years, I didn't work, not because I didn't want to, because he didn't want me to. He said it made more sense for him to handle the career stuff while I handled the home. And I believed him. I thought we were a team. I thought he had my back. He controlled everything, the bank accounts, the credit cards, even the groceries. I had to ask for money like I was a kid asking for allowance. And every time I brought up maybe getting a job or starting something of my own, he'd laugh. Not a funny laugh, the kind that makes you feel small. He'd say things like, "What are you going to do? You don't have any skills. You've been out of the game too long. No one's going to hire you." And the worst part? I started to believe him. I had a degree. I had experience before we got married. But after years of hearing that I wasn't capable, I started to think maybe he was right. Maybe I really couldn't survive without him. Then one day, everything changed. He came home and told me he was leaving, not for another woman, at least not in the way you'd think. He was leaving because I wasn't ambitious enough for him. Can you believe that? The guy who spent 8 years making sure I had zero ambition was now leaving because I didn't have any. He said he needed someone who matched his energy, someone who was going places, someone who wasn't just sitting at home all day. I was devastated, not because I loved him. I think I stopped loving him years ago, but because I was terrified. He was right about one thing. I didn't have money. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything in my name. He made sure of that. He moved out within a week, took half the furniture, left me with a lease I couldn't afford, and about $300 in a checking account he forgot to close. I had no idea how I was going to survive the next month, let alone the next year. I spent the first 2 weeks crying. Then I spent the next 2 weeks angry. And then something clicked. I realized I had two choices. I could spiral, or I could figure it out. So I chose to figure it out. I started looking for jobs, any jobs. I applied to retail stores, coffee shops, reception desks, anything that would pay the bills. But here's the thing, I hadn't worked in 8 years. My resume was a joke. No one called me back, not one person. That's when I got desperate. I started looking into things I could do from home, freelancing, online gigs, anything. I didn't care if it paid $5 an hour. I just needed something. I stumbled across this YouTube video about digital marketing. I didn't even know what that meant. But the guy in the video said you could learn it for free and start making money within a few months. It sounded too good to be true, but I had nothing to lose. So I spent the next month glued to my laptop. I watched every free course I could find. I learned about social media marketing, email campaigns, SEO, Facebook ads, all of it. I took notes like I was back in college. I practiced on fake clients. I built a portfolio out of thin air. And then I did something crazy. I started reaching out to small businesses in my area. I told them I could help them grow their social media for cheap. I undercharged like crazy. I'm talking $200 a month for full social media management. But I didn't care. I needed experience. I needed proof that I could do this. 3 people said yes. three tiny local businesses that barely had an online presence: a bakery, a cleaning service, and a guy who sold custom furniture. I worked my butt off for them. I posted every day. I ran ads. I responded to comments. I made their pages look legit, and it worked. Within 2 months, all three of them saw real results. The bakery doubled their weekend sales. The cleaning service booked out for a month straight. The furniture guy got his first wholesale order. They were happy, and more importantly, I was happy. For the first time in years, I felt like I was good at something. Word spread. One of my clients referred me to another business, then another, then another. Within 4 months, I had 12 clients. I raised my rates. I hired a part-time assistant. I registered my business as an LLC. I opened a separate bank account. I made a website. I was running a real company. I called it Elevate Digital. Cheesy, I know, but I didn't care. It was mine. By month 6, I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. More than my husband made at his corporate job, actually. I moved into a better apartment. I bought a new laptop. I started putting money into savings, real savings, money that no one could touch but me. I felt unstoppable. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, and I did it all without him. Now here's where it gets good. One day, I got an email through my website. It was a job application. We were growing fast, and I posted that we were hiring a marketing coordinator, someone to help manage client accounts and run campaigns. I got maybe 30 applications that week. I was going through them one by one, and then I saw it, a name I recognized. His name. I'm not gonna lie. My heart stopped. I opened the resume, and sure enough, it was him, my ex-husband, applying to work at my company, and he had no idea it was mine. See, I'd kept my maiden name for the business. I didn't use my photo on the website. The name of the CEO wasn't plastered anywhere public, so unless you dug deep, you wouldn't know it was me. I sat there staring at the screen for a solid 10 minutes. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Part of me wanted to delete the email and pretend I never saw it. But another part of me, the part that remembered every nasty thing he ever said, wanted to see this through. So I did what any professional would do. I scheduled an interview. I didn't tell him who he'd be meeting with. The email just said he'd be interviewed by the hiring team. I booked him for a Thursday at 2. I spent the next 3 days preparing, not just for the interview, but for the moment he'd walk into that room and realize who was sitting across from him. Thursday came. I dressed sharp. Blazer, heels, the works. I set up the conference room. I had my assistant bring him in. The look on his face when he walked through that door was worth every sleepless night I'd had 6 months earlier. His smile dropped. His eyes went wide. He actually froze in the doorway. I smiled, a real smile, the kind you give when you're completely in control. I said, "Hi, thanks for coming in. Have a seat." He stuttered. He literally stuttered. He said, "Wait, you run this company?" I nodded. I said, "I do." "Now, let's talk about your experience." He tried to recover. He sat down. He straightened his tie, but I could see his hands shaking. He wasn't expecting this, not even a little. I asked him the same questions I asked every candidate. What's your experience with digital marketing? What tools do you know? Why do you want this position? He gave generic answers. Honestly, his resume was average at best. He'd been working at some mid-sized company doing content coordination. Nothing impressive. He didn't have half the skills my other candidates had. But here's the thing. I didn't bring him in to hire him. I brought him in to see him squirm, to show him that I wasn't the person he left behind, that I built something real, that I didn't need him, that I never did. But then something unexpected happened. He broke. Halfway through the interview, he put his head in his hands and said, "Look, I know this is weird. I know I messed up. I'm sorry. I really need this job. My company laid off half the staff last month. I've been applying everywhere. I didn't know this was your business. If I had known, I wouldn't have applied. But I'm desperate." And for a second, just a second, I felt bad for him. Not because I wanted to, but because I'm human. And seeing someone you used to love fall apart in front of you does something to you, even if they hurt you. But then I remembered. I remembered every time he told me I wasn't good enough, every time he made me feel worthless, every time he controlled my life, and that feeling went away real fast. I leaned back in my chair. I said, "Here's the thing. You're not a bad marketer. You're just not great. And I only hire great. But I do have an opening. It's entry level. It pays $45,000 a year. You'd be reporting to my HR manager. It's a step down from what you're used to, but it's stable." He looked at me like I'd just handed him a winning lottery ticket. He said, "Are you serious?" I said, "I am. But let me be clear. If you take this job, you follow the rules. You respect the team. You do the work. And you never ever bring up our past in this office. This is business. Can you handle that?" He nodded so fast I thought his head might fall off. He said, "Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I won't let you down." I stood up. I shook his hand. I said, "Good. My assistant will send over the offer letter. Welcome to Elevate Digital." He started 2 weeks later. And you know what? He's been fine. Not great, just fine. He does his job. He keeps his head down. He doesn't cause problems. And every time he sees me in the office, I can see it in his eyes. That mix of regret and disbelief. I didn't hire him to be cruel. I hired him because I could, because I wanted him to see what I built. I wanted him to work under the same roof as the woman he said would never survive without him. I wanted him to know that he was wrong. Some people think I should have rejected him, that I should have slammed the door in his face. But that's not who I am. I didn't do this for revenge. I did this for me, to prove to myself that I was more than what he said I was. And honestly, having him work for me is the best reminder I could ever ask for. Every time I see him at his desk, I'm reminded of how far I've come, how much I've grown, how I turned my worst moment into my biggest win. So here's what I learned. People will try to make you small. They'll tell you that you can't do it, that you're not smart enough, not strong enough, not enough, period. And if you listen to them, they'll be right. But if you ignore them, if you bet on yourself, if you put in the work, even when it's scary, even when you have no idea what you're doing, you'll surprise yourself. You'll build something they never thought you could, and you'll realize that you never needed them in the first place. I'm not special. I didn't have some secret advantage. I just refused to stay where he left me. I refused to believe his version of who I was, and that made all the difference. If you're in a situation where someone's trying to control you or tell you what you're capable of, get out. I know it's not easy. I know it's terrifying. But staying is worse. Staying means letting them win. You don't need permission to bet on yourself. You don't need anyone's approval to start over. You just need to decide that you're worth it, and then you need to do the work. I'm not going to lie and say it's going to be easy. It's not. There were nights I cried myself to sleep. There were days I wanted to give up. There were moments I thought he was right, but I kept going. And that's the only reason I'm here. So if you're watching this and you're in a bad spot, just know that 6 months from now, you could be in a completely different place. You could be running your own thing. You could be happy. You could be free, but only if you start today. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for someone to save you. Save yourself. You're the only one who can. And if someone told you that you'd never make it without them, prove them wrong. Not because they deserve to see it, but because you deserve to live it. That's my story. That's how the guy who said I'd never survive without him ended up working for me. And honestly, it feels pretty damn good. If this story hit home, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.